Hi, welcome to another IELTS video. In this video, we're going to look at 9 alternative words that will help you get to IELTS Span 9. And I've used the word alternative because these are options that can be used to supplant some of the more simple words you regularly use. So using these alternatives is a great way to sound both more academic and more formal in your IELTS. As always, I'll show you exactly how to use these words in an IELTS context to curb the chances of you sounding robotic, but please be proactive and check your dictionary as you practice your use of these words. If you find this video helpful, visit my blog at IELTSIELTS.com and join us at the forum IELTSnetwork.com. The first couple of words I would like to look at are alternatives for good. They are not exact synonyms, but in the realm of describing something that is beneficial. Good is an adjective that commonly blankets all kinds of situations. Using good on your examination, in my opinion, is a wasted opportunity to demonstrate your lexical resources to your examiner. So for example, in IELTS Speaking Part 1, it is common for the examiner to ask you about your present condition or endeavors or professional direction or hobbies or interests or just generally about your current situation. And these are topics that very commonly encourage a person to use a simple word like good. So right there you've got a great opportunity to impress your examiner from the beginning of the exam. So to give you an example, if you are talking with your examiner about your profession, you might gravitate towards a phrase like, I have a good job, or my career has been good for several reasons. And some fitting alternatives could be rewarding. That's a great way, very easy way to replace the more simpler vocabulary, or satisfying. So my career has been satisfying for several reasons. Or my time in Sydney has been good. My time in Sydney has been rewarding. For example, if maybe you had a cue card that asked you to talk about the place that you live, and this might be part of your opening. So my time in Sydney has been rewarding for the following reasons, and then you go on to talk about that. These two words are also useful for writing task 2. So recently we saw this question: do you prefer to work for a large or small company? And there were variations that were reported. Some of them said, do you agree or disagree? So when you're sharing your conclusion sentence in these supporting paragraphs, you might write something like, it is for this reason that I feel working for a large company is better than working for a small company. And that's fine. But if you find that you're using words like the comparative of good, better, regularly, you might feel like you're repeating yourself. So a nice alternative for this wording would be a word like rewarding. So it is for this reason that I feel working for a large company is, sorry, we'd have to use the comparative, more rewarding than working for a small company, or more satisfying than working for a small company. Okay, so those are two very easy alternatives for good to get us started. Now word number 3 today is merit. And merit is a noun that is used to refer to something that holds value. It is commonly used to describe something that has a certain integrity to it or logical backing. So it's a great word to use to describe a conclusion that you draw in task 2. And this is because it goes beyond simply communicating something that is beneficial. So for example, in this writing task 2, we had some people believe that diet and exercise in a population are largely the responsibility of the government. Others feel people should be responsible for their own diets and their own levels of exercise. This was a question that was seen just this past, I believe it was the 19th of July. This is the question that was seen. So you might use merit, for example, again in the conclusion section of one of your supporting paragraphs. Thus, the argument that governments should be responsible for the diets and exercise levels of citizens is good. So we're describing the argument as being good. And with merit, we might say, thus, there is merit to the argument that governments, just take out is good here, that governments should be responsible for the diets and exercise level of citizens. Okay, or if we were to change, go back to is good, take that out, we might say holds merit. Okay, word number 4 is optimal. And optimal is not a direct synonym for good, but it does describe something that is favorable, or more precisely, most favorable. It qualifies something that fulfills perfectly the criteria for another thing. So I guess the closest true synonym for optimal that I can think of would be a word like perfect. Okay, so it fulfills a criteria exactly. So to use the word optimal, for example, your examiner might ask you something like, at what time of the day are you most productive? So, this might be perhaps a part 1 question if you guys were talking about your work or something like that. And you might respond, a good work time for me is in the morning. It is when my mind is clearest and I can. Again, you don't want to fall into the trap where you're describing everything as good. So you might say something like, my optimal work time, and take out for me here, of course, is in the morning. It is when my mind is clearest and I can. Another time when we might use a word like optimal is in writing task 1. This is not a recent question, but if you were given pie charts and they were comparing the diets of older men and revealing varying states of health, so maybe pie chart 1 showed balances of protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and that these balances were unhealthy, and then pie chart 2 shows a more healthy balance of these different items. So we might describe the second pie chart in this way. The second pie chart illustrates the most optimal weightings of fat, carbohydrates, and protein for men aged 50 and older. And so of course this would be replacing a word like best, which would be the superlative of good. Okay. An often difficult to communicate idea is that of the rate at which something happens. Candidates often incorrectly use words like faster and slower when alternatives like accelerate or retard would be more fitting and more academic sounding. So word number 5 is accelerate. Accelerate is a word that obviously refers to an item that increases in speed or pace. It's an easy word to use in place of more simple vocabulary like fast or faster or quick, and it adds a bit of decoration to your language. So for example, in your speaking, if you're talking about your education, you might gravitate towards a wording like this. The clubs I joined at university helped me study faster, when you could say something like, the clubs I joined at university accelerated my studies. Okay, and again, this sort of use you're going to have to practice quite a bit before you get into your examination. You want to be sure that that you are able to use it quite naturally and that it's not forced. So be sure to do lots of practice with your dictionary in hand to make sure that you're using these words correctly. Okay. Another speaking option, perhaps, careers in high tech are typically quick in my hometown, as many young people engage in internships at the nearby tech park. So here we're just trying to say that we're from a place that has a tech park nearby, and thus people are able to more quickly get into tech-related careers because they have this facility so close to where they live. So another way to word this would be careers in high tech are typically accelerated. Okay. Just describing that they move more quickly than people that are trying to produce high tech careers in other cities that do not have the facilities of a tech park close by. Writing task 1. So accelerate is a great word to have in your arsenal if you're writing the academic. Often you'll see graphs that show data that is, it gets faster or increases exponentially, and you want to be able to describe this appropriately in your response. So growth of laptop sales got faster between 2002 and 2004. Growth of laptop sales accelerated. Okay, let's go to our word number 6. Retard is a verb that describes something that slows another thing. However, it is a word that isn't regularly used in spoken English outside of an academic setting, so I advise you to avoid using it in your speaking unless you are at a much higher band, because it could sound forced or robotic if used by someone whose speaking isn't all that refined. For those of you at a higher band that want to give it a try, remember to stress the second syllable. It's retard, retard. So, in speaking, for example, you might, again, use it to talk about something related to your studies, maybe something that held your studies back. So, for example, inadequate language skills were what most retarded my progress at the University of Calgary. Retarded, however, is a great word to use in your writing regardless of your band. It's much more commonly seen in English writing than it is in speaking. It's very academic sounding, and it adds some color to an essay when it's used correctly. So for example, this writing task 2 question, young people learn more and at an accelerated speed through the use of technology. Our example might say something like this. For example, libraries that do not electronically index their resources slow the rate at which a student can can access information. And slow the rate, we would obviously just replace slow with retard the rate at which a student can access information. And again, it just adds a bit of academic color to your writing. Word number... Oh, another area candidates sometimes have trouble with is qualifying degrees of importance. Often the word important can be repeated, or awkward uses of words like top or big or tiny or are attempted, and this can lead the candidate to fluency issues and incoherence. So I want to demonstrate a couple of ways you can properly qualify something as either important or unimportant. So the first word in this section is key. Key is a word that can operate as an adjective or a noun. You should reserve this word for describing something that played a critical part in a successful situation. So for example, if you're given a cue card in speaking and asked to describe an individual that helped you greatly, you might say the wedding planner we hired was a key individual for 3 reasons. Firstly, he was able to, and then you go on to talk about it. And so candidates, they sometimes they will change the word important to a big or a top individual, and these are awkward and they create incoherence. Key is the word that you're looking for there. The examiner might ask you, how do you define a hero? And a response could be something like this: I think integrity, kindness, and honesty are key. And here, of course, key is acting as an adjective. To me, a hero is someone that does the right thing even when no one is looking. Okay, writing task 1. A key feature of the diagram is the pause that occurs between the first and second halves of the paper-making process. This would, of course, be for an academic exam. And the word key is here acting as an adjective to qualify feature. So we're reserving it to talk about something that is quite unique about this process. Word 8, chiefly. Chiefly is a word used to describe the main component or contributor to something. So here we see, for example, speaking. This would be in response to a part 2 monologue about an important person in your country. So the examiner might follow up. This is in part 3 now. They might ask you, what do you think, and then whoever the person was, will be most remembered for? And you may respond in this way: I think will be chiefly remembered for his contributions to science. Or writing task 2, you might use it in this manner. For example, it has long been established that carbon dioxide emissions are chiefly responsible for global warming. Okay, and just a very nice way, a very nice word to replace mainly. And finally, trivial. Trivial is a great word to use to describe a part of something that isn't very important or doesn't contribute. So I suppose insignificant would be a fitting synonym. Trivial is a good word to practice. It allows you to vary your language when talking about something that's small or unimportant, which does come up as a situation that does come up from time to time in the examination. So it's good to know how to use a word like trivial. For example, in speaking, your examiner might ask you, how central was the internet to your studies at university? And the case could be that, that the internet was not central at all to your studies. And you might want to word your response in this way. To be honest, the role it played was quite trivial. I found the vast amount of my studying was done using the traditional resources found at the university library. Okay, again, it's a great way to talk about something that did not have a very large impact upon another thing. Okay, I hope that video helps decorate your language a little bit and helps get you towards that band 9. Thank you very much for listening and have a nice day.